Good morning, everybody. Good morning. Welcome to Money in the Morning, aka Economic Elevation, aka Financial Consciousness. My name is Dr. Boyce Watkins. I hope everybody's having a good day today. I am feeling good, despite the fact that we are in a war officially, which is kind of wild, right? Kind of wild, kind of dangerous. Can't play with that. All right. So as we start Money in the Morning, let me give you guys some overviews in terms of what's going on with this war and some things you may want to pay attention to as it pertains to investments. Times like this tend to create a lot of volatility. There's a lot of chaos right now in financial markets. I'll tell you one thing that happened, just if you want to talk about just the financial side of this. Actually happened to buy a lot of gold on Friday, which, I mean, not to say I'd rather us not be in war, but owning gold right now is probably pretty good. I don't know if buying gold is the best thing to do unless you think the war is going to get worse. If you think the war is going to get worse, then buying gold would work. If you think it's not going to get worse, if you think it's going to get better, then maybe buying some put options on gold might be better because the price might come down. Personally, since I'm already positioned as an owner of a substantial amount of gold, I'll probably buy some puts too, more so for safety, just to make sure that if things do change, I can actually have some insurance in place, and my portfolio won't get hammered when the price drops. So a lot of times when you get something, when you own something and it does really well, first thing you do is protect your gains, right? That should be in my view, not does not invest in advice. Y'all know this, but in my view, the first goal should be to protect what you have, count your blessings, and then protect your blessings. Right? Don't block your blessings and don't throw your blessings away. Get you some insurance on the big win so that you can stay connected to the asset without worrying about losing everything that you gained initially. All right, now if you want to know some other details in terms of what's happening with this war and as well as how it links to the financial markets. So typically in times like this, first of all, this war is different. I did a video on my Instagram, which is Dr. Boyce Finance, and I was explaining that this war is a little bit different because a lot of supposed safe havens have been hit. Bahrain has been hit. Doha. My wife and I were going to fly through Doha. When we do our group trip to South Africa, Doha was going to be our layover, and now we're kind of second guessing that. What else? Was another one? Israel, of course, Jerusalem, and was it Dubai? Dubai, yeah, Dubai. There was a hotel in Dubai that got hit. So this is kind of shifting a lot of perceptions of safety, right? Like I would just say I don't think generally that there is any place on earth that's like always safe all the time. They can give you the perception of safety, but a lot of things can happen in different places around the world. So it's always important to kind of keep that in mind and pay attention to changing economic conditions. Okay, so the other thing about this war is that let me see here is that there's a lot of conflicting theories regarding what exactly why we're at war. One thing I've learned I learned about our government is 9 times out of 10 the reason that they say they're at war is not the reason that they're actually at war. Usually they'll say, oh, it's freedom, democracy, or some other crap, and a lot of times it's financial. And I've heard just a mix of theories on this. And so one of them that I heard that was quite interesting was they talked about Venezuela and how Venezuela had they have a lot of oil, but it's what they call heavy crude. It's like really thick, sludgy oil that's really hard to kind of process apparently. And in order to use the oil, apparently they have to mix it with light crude. And apparently Iran has a lot of light crude. That's one theory that I heard. Another one was obviously that there's a theory that there are people in Israel who control the U.S. government, which I don't doubt that. If you look at where the money flows, and you look at who gives money to what politicians. I think they asked poor Jasmine Crockett. They asked her a question about it, and her answer made zero sense. Right? So it's basically, and you see a lot of politicians. They get into office. Who they pledge allegiance to almost as quick as they pledge allegiance to the flag, which is just a little bit disturbing, to be quite frank. But then again, who am I to judge? And so there's a lot of theories on this. Obviously though, this war is just not a good idea, and the price of oil is probably going to keep going up, up, up. And a lot of that links to something called the Strait of Hormuz. The Strait of Hormuz is right near Iran, and it is a tiny little area where a large percentage of the world's tankers and oil ships through that little strait. And so, one of my friends, who's a really smart guy, he goes by the name Tall Guy Tycoon. He announced on his Instagram that the Iranians have taken over the Strait of Hormuz. And he played an audio where they were making an announcement like, "Do not come through here. If you come through here, then you know." And I looked that up. I was like, "Huh? Did they really do that? Because that would be almost like economic suicide for the Iranian government, right? That would be crazy for them to shut down that strait because they ship their own oil through it. So they'd be cutting off their nose to spite their face. They'd be hurting us for sure, but they'd be hurting themselves. And also, it'd be difficult to maintain that choke point. And actually, it turns out they didn't actually take it over. They were just kind of barking. During war, there's like a lot of barking, a lot of threats. So they were basically saying, "Come through here, we're going to jack you up." Some of the ships still came through, right? Now, but what happened though was a lot of ships got scared and they said, well, maybe they're serious, so they ran in the other direction, right? So that did still disrupt things, but they were playing chicken. It's kind of like, okay, we're gonna pretend like we're gonna do it, but we're not really gonna do it, or we're gonna pretend like we're gonna really punch you back, but we're not gonna punch too hard because we don't want that kind of smoke. So there's a lot of bluffing, a lot of just a lot of blustery talk during war a lot of times. You know, we will obliterate you, we will destroy you. And so I don't like it. I hope it ends. But until then, you're gonna see spikes in the price of oil. You're gonna see spikes in what they call the VIX. The VIX is the fear gauge of the market. You're gonna see the price of gold most likely go up. Silver will probably go up too, I bet. I wouldn't be surprised. And actually, speaking of that, I promised you all that I would do a redo of the silver deep dive. And so the silver deep dive that we did before, some of you couldn't make it live, so I promise you I'd do it again for you. And for those of you that couldn't make it the first time, if you want to sign up, it's going to be on the silver deep dive where I break down different ways to own silver, different uses of silver, projections of silver, what I'm doing with silver in my portfolio, things like that. That's going to be on Tuesday, March 3rd at 8:30 p.m. So what I'll do is I'll put the link in here if you want to sign up. The date on the screen is going to say February 10th, but clearly that's the past. And I'm just going to do it again for those that couldn't make it live. So the link is in the chat. And I'll also text the link out to you. Make sure you're on the text list. Text morning to 87948. Text morning to 87948. So there's the link to the silver deep dive. I believe silver will probably be a beneficiary. I own a lot of silver and a lot of gold. But the thing about silver and gold, about owning those assets, is most people, in my view, they do it wrong. They do it wrong because they just buy it and they hope that the price goes up. And if the price goes down, they get killed. I don't think that's the best approach. I think you should approach buying any financial asset the same way you approach the purchase of any asset in your life. If you buy a car, give me a yes or no. If you buy a car, do you get car insurance on the car? Yes or no? If you buy a house, do you get homeowners insurance? Or do you just kind of wing it and just hope that your house doesn't burn down and cause you to lose everything? You have this thing called a life, which is the most valuable asset you own. Does anybody got life insurance? Anybody in here got life insurance? If you don't have life insurance, by the way, I need you to leave class right now. You should not be here because you should be getting life insurance for yourself and for your family. I need you to go, like, literally hang up right now, call a life insurance person, Yolanda Spivey or something, whoever, and or Aisha Verzi, and get you some life insurance. I think Aisha might even be in the chat. Aisha, if you're here, put your phone number in here, girl, please. Because seriously, I need you to have some life insurance. Do you understand how the black wealth problem will be fixed so readily if we simply all just made life insurance the most important thing that we do as a culture? One of the most important things we do as a culture, right? Imagine, for example, imagine if I don't know. Let's be stupid here. Imagine if our wealth was increased by the percentage of black people who know how to dance. If wealth was somehow tied to your ability to dance, let's pretend. This is all made up here. If our ability if our wealth was tied to our ability to dance, we'd be the richest people on the planet, most likely. Do you agree? If our wealth was tied to our ability to play basketball, right, we'd be the richest people on the planet. If our wealth was tied to how many of our people go to church every Sunday, we'd be the richest people on the planet. So what I would say is Why do we go to church? Why do we play basketball? Why do we eat fried chicken? Why do we know how to dance? Because it's part of culture. Like people, when they say, "Well, what does it mean to be black?" They'll show some people doing the electric slide, and they'll be at the hair salon, or they'll be at grandma's house eating soul food or whatever, right? Like they kind of feel like that's what it means to be black. Well, I'm throwing out another proposal. I'm saying, let's change the culture. Let's own this culture, right? Don't be a product of your environment. Make your environment a product of you. So let's change the culture. Let's say if you ain't black, if you ain't got life insurance, if you ain't got life insurance, then you ain't black. Cause every black person gonna have life insurance. Cause we know we love our babies and we love our family. Can we agree? Yeah, that's my resolution. Can we give me a yes? Let's be intentional here. Can we agree on that? That being black means that you don't leave your children ass out. How about that? If you black, that means you're a black man. You would never ever leave your people hurting because you died on a Tuesday, right? If you're a black woman, oh, you love the family. You want to make sure that in the middle of their grief that they get a nice big fat check for $50,000, $100,000 in the bank because grieving is easier when you got $100,000 in the bank, right? They're still gonna be sad, but they'll be crying in a nice new car or in a big beautiful house, right? But it's still sad, right? They'll be sad. Okay, so yeah, so there we go. Life insurance means that's acting black. So when I say what does it mean to act black, you say, oh, that means I got my life insurance. Makes no sense. GoFundMe funerals, incredibly immature. Should never happen. An absolute embarrassment, honestly. And I'm not trying to be mean, but it is because you can't tell me that you couldn't afford to do that because you afforded to do a lot of other things during your life. I've seen guys on Instagram flashing money who had to get a GoFundMe funeral. So they can't say I didn't do it because I couldn't afford it. You did it because you weren't economically mature enough to make the decision that's going to benefit your family. Maybe you were too selfish to think about other people. So I'm not here to be mean to anybody who hasn't done it yet, but I really want to encourage you, get the life insurance. So let's circle back. Let's go back. I always bring it back. So you buy an asset, you buy silver, you buy stock or whatever, get some insurance on it, right? Just it goes up. When my Nvidia stock shot up, I bought Nvidia when it was about $10 or $15. Now it's almost $200. When Nvidia shot up and I made a whole bunch of money, first thing I did was I got insurance on that money. It's like, okay, if Nvidia decides to crash, I don't want to lose everything, right? So insurance, that's it. That's a simple idea, very simple idea. All right. As I move on, I want to give a shout out to Mr. Tim Haskins. I don't know if Tim is here or not, but Tim is one of the supporters of the Black Business School, and his business is Tim is really good at getting loans nationwide. So if you're trying to raise money for what you're trying to do, he specializes in residential loans for home purchases, refinances, or cash out refinances. So that means if you are looking to buy a home or you're looking to get your cash out your equity, or so you can maybe make an investment and sell stock options and make money that way, which is a great way to make money. He is your guy. And so he also can help with down payment assistance. So if you're looking to get the money for a down payment, this is important because home ownership is shown through all the studies to be one of the leading pathways to wealth. It's the way that's the number one way people go from poverty to middle class. And the way people go from middle class to upper class is through the stock market. So anyway, his phone number, I'm gonna write his phone number. His website is lockinloans.com. Like you're gonna lock it in, like lockinloans.com. And his phone number, write it down, somebody in the chat for me, 661-992-7005. 661-992-7005. His name is Tim Haskins, and it's lockinloans.com and 661-992-7005. And so this is kind of a thank you to Tim. He's a supporter of the school. And if anybody else wants a shout out or something, if you want like a sponsor at the All Black National Convention or something like that, I will shout you out. And every day when we do this class, there's a few thousand people that watch. So we'd love this. You help us fund the school, we'll support you. So if you're interested in doing anything like that, just email support@theblackbusinessschool.com. They can help you get started with that. All right, so let's move on. Okay, so I want to share something with you all. Let's go. Let's do story time. Let's take a field trip to Instagram real quick, and let's see here. So I'm going to now. This is just something I put up just because I have another Instagram, by the way, a backup. It's Dr. Boyce Money because I had almost 500,000 before, and they took the page down. So now I'm not gonna. You ain't got to punch me twice. So I decided to create a second one. But anyway, this is something I just put up because I was just frustrated one day because I see us fighting really hard for politicians, but I'm like, why don't we fight for our kids just as hard as we fight for the politicians? Like, fight for your favorite politician, but you should fight for your children first, in my opinion. Like, it bothers me that an overwhelming majority of black kids don't read at grade level. I kind of think that that should be really important. I think that kids who can't read have a harder time in life than kids who are prepared. And so, self-esteem, self-love to me means we take care of our own before we start taking care of other people. And I hope that that's okay if I say that. Now I'm going to play this video. This is regarding a financial story that we can learn from. So let me play it real quick. I'll just play it right now. Let me know if you can hear it.
I am inflation, and if your money isn't growing, I am shrinking it every year. I am debt, and the longer you ignore me, the more I quietly tax your future. I am interest rates, and I decide whether your payments build wealth or drain it. I am lifestyle inflation, and every upgrade you don't plan for keeps you working longer. I am passive income, and I reward systems that work even when you rest.
I am generational wealth, and I am built when discipline outlives one lifetime.
I am inflation, and if your money isn't growing, I am shrinking it every year.
I am debt, and the longer you ignore me, the more I quietly tax your future.
I am interest rates, and I decide whether your payments build wealth or drain it. I am lifestyle inflation, and every upgrade you don't plan for keeps you working longer. I am passive income, and I reward systems that work even when you rest.
I am generational wealth, and I am built when discipline outlives one lifetime.
All right. So I played that twice because I wanted you to see that. You guys were able to see that, right? Okay. Yeah. So let's go through each of those things. And these are variables that your kid should understand. You literally, if you want a benchmark, my goal would be, look, if my child is 3, I'll make sure that by the time my child is 10, they can tell me what inflation is, what debt is, what interest rates are, what's lifestyle inflation, what's passive income, what's generational wealth. Very, very important because a lot of people get hammered by these things. And capitalism, how many of you have ever heard me explain how capitalism actually can be a form of slavery? Like, how many of you have you ever heard me sort of break that down? Let me know. Give me a yes if you believe me when I tell you that capitalism turns into slavery. But here's the thing: capitalism itself isn't what enslaves you. It is capitalism mixed with your lack of preparation or your lack of discipline. If you are not disciplined, not prepared, and not informed, then capitalism does turn into slavery. Capitalism is like pimping. It reminds me like a lot of pimps. They don't have to actually force anybody to work for them most of the time. A lot of the sex traffickers, they don't actually, which I told you I have a real issue with hip hop promoting sex trafficking all those years, right? Like it's cool to be a PIMP and all that. Most of the time, they don't kidnap their employees, so to speak. They don't force them to do it. They manipulate them, right? They go in and they kind of sweet talk them, right? And they're looking for opportunities, vulnerabilities that will allow them to say, well, look, I didn't make you do nothing. You chose, you chose me, right? There was a famous line in Goldie the Mac or whatever. What was it? What's it called? The Mac. There's a part where the Mac says, she chose me, right? So here's the thing. The choices tend to be connected. The ability to make someone choose is a lot of times connected to their lack of preparedness, information, maybe their self-esteem, things like that, right? Or just economic desperation, right? So if I'm trying to get you to do something you don't want to do, if you are stuck financially because you weren't economically prepared and you don't know what's going on, so you don't know what options you actually have because nobody ever taught you how to make money by doing anything other than working for somebody, then you're kind of stuck. It becomes a type of slavery, but it's like a volunteer slavery in a way. But it's built on exploiting your vulnerabilities. Like Michael Francis, the mafia guy, he said whenever we would get players to fix games, he said we never forced them to do it. He said we never forced them. We would tell them not to do it. We would say, hey, look, you don't have to be involved with us. You really don't want to be involved with the mafia because once we get you in our grip, we're gonna collect our money. But he would say, so hey, look, if you're not ready for this, then you should do it. And the guys, no, 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 I really want to because I really want to pay off that. Right. And what he said is that it's the debt and the greed, it's the deficiencies that give them the opportunity to just they don't have to kick the door down. They walk right in. You open the door. The athletes literally, this is how they would get the athletes to fix games. They would take advantage of their arrogance, like, oh, I can predict football games, and and now that's how I'm going to make my money. They take advantage of their financial desperation. Now you're $250,000 in debt and you don't know how to get out. Then it's like, okay, well, now you've got no other option. You backed yourself into the corner. We didn't do it. Okay, so making sure your kids and your family are prepared in terms of understanding how the game works, that is essential to survive in the damn game. That is essential. Capitalism is a complex game. You don't have a lot of help in preparing uh, for to play the game. There's just not the systems you rely on, public school systems, your employer, media. None of these systems have an incentive to fully prepare you to end up at the top of the game. They just don't. All right, so let's go through each one piece by piece, and I'll just give you kind of a one-liner on each one and how that affects your economic situation. So inflation is a funny thing. Inflation is it's an artificial construct. An inflated economy is one that grows, but it also is a phenomenon that tends to benefit wealthier people more than working class people because working class people don't get automatic inflation of their wages, but they'll get automatic inflation of their expenses. That's how people fall further and further behind. That's why mortgage loan debt's at an all-time high, student loan debt's at an all-time high, credit card debt's at an all-time high, car loan debt's at an all-time high, because people are taking on more debt to feed their addiction to consumption. They have to keep spending even if they don't have the money, and then the bank shows up and says, "Okay, well you can keep spending. Here's a credit card. Just get a credit card." And then you'll just be pledging your wages to me for the rest of your life, and that's just kind of how it works, right? So inflation tends to benefit people at the top because inflation benefits people that are producers. Because your product costs more, but you're selling it for more, so you're making more money. It also benefits people that own assets. They call it asset inflation. So as inflation rises, the value of that home goes up. So you own the home. So what do you care? Now your child is worth $1 million and they own two properties and the value of the property is going up by 10% a year. They're fine. They're not worried about the cost of carriage at the grocery store because they're making their money in a certain way. They're not depending on wages as their primary economic driver. They're keeping their poise. Thank you, Calvin. Poise, what we teach the kids. Producer, owner, investor, saver, entrepreneur. Producer, owner, investor, saver, entrepreneur. That's how they're making their money. Let's keep going here. And actually, speaking of that, this one more thing I wanted to share with you um, before we move to the next piece here is there is the last one was generational wealth. Let's jump to the last one. And one thing I created was a generational wealth readiness quiz to just so you can assess yourself and determine where you are when it comes to generational wealth. My team test tried it out and they said it works fine. So here's the link to the generational wealth readiness quiz. So it'll ask you a series of questions and it'll give you a score, and that score will determine how prepared you are to pass wealth to the next generation. So that's in the chat as well. So feel free to take that quiz. It'll take about 5 minutes and it'll give you a lot of insight into where you are, what you got to work on, what you need to do next, that kind of thing. And also, you guys know we have a generational wealth club called Lift. Stands for Legacy Investors for Tomorrow. So we cover estate planning and all this other stuff. We bring experts in. So feel free to go to drboycelift.com. All right. Debt. Debt is another thing that creates the slavery, right? Where you in the trappings of debt, a lot of times will come through the credit cards, through student loans, even mortgages to some extent, even though the house is not terrible debt because the value goes up. But debt is a big one. That's how they kept the sharecroppers on the plantation, is you put them in debt. The most sinister types of debt can become predatory because what happens is that the debt grows faster than your ability to pay. So you think you're digging yourself out of a hole, but the hole's getting deeper every year. So you just end up working until you're dead. Right? That's a system. I think that student loans have created a class of highly educated sharecroppers because you're working to pay off a debt, and I know 65-year-olds who are still paying the student loans. So it's going to keep getting worse. It's not going to get better. Interest rates are interesting. Interest rates are the are the money that's charged for you renting other people's capital, just like renting a car. You rent money, right? So they charge you an interest rate. Sometimes it's fair, sometimes it's not. You have to decide if the amount that you're paying is less than what you're getting from that interest rate. So there that distinguishes between good debt and bad debt. Good debt is debt that you take on where the amount you're paying to secure the debt, the interest rate is lower than the amount you expect to make from the debt. So you're making 12%, you're paying 4%. Well, that's a good deal. That's a good deal for you. You will build wealth from that because you have a surplus, you have a profit on your investment. But a lot of credit cards or whatever, credit card spending on consumer items, that becomes very bad debt because the interest rates are super high and you get no return on capital for anything that you put that money into. So there's a difference between somebody who spent several $100,000 over the course of their career and have nothing to show for it versus somebody who spent that same amount and they have assets to show for it. And those assets are generating income. I'm not judging, but that's what you want to aim for. Lifestyle inflation is what happens when you make more money and you believe you're supposed to spend more. So people, a lot of times, the victims of this are people like maybe professional athletes or people that get really nice fancy jobs after you went to Harvard or Yale and now you're making six figures. So you feel like you're supposed to drive a certain kind of car. You're supposed to live in a certain kind of house. You're supposed to dress a certain way. And so the lifestyle inflation can become very, very heavy, especially when you get to where you're carrying the load for other people. And I speak about that a lot in culturally in my book, The Ten Commandments of Black Economic Power. And by the way, some of you are asking whether it's in audio form. There is an audio version. If you go to Audible, and you look up The Ten Commandments of Black Economic Power, you can find it on Audible. If you don't want to read it, you can just listen to it. And by the way, thank you for the reviews. The reviews are I think I got 4.9 stars out of 5, so that made me really happy. I'm glad you guys like it. And it is a bestseller on Amazon. So apparently we were able to make something happen there. And I'm really proud of that because I've never gotten a book deal from a publishing company or a TV deal or a radio deal, none of that stuff. The fact that we're able to hit millions and millions of people around the globe and nobody's been helping us except you all. You all have been helping us. I appreciate that. And that to me is something that pleases me because when I first started doing this, I kid you not, in 2006, 2007, when I would go to radio stations and I say, I want to talk about black wealth. Black people need to learn in wealth and economics. There were people who said, no, Doc, black people don't care about wealth. And I was like, that doesn't make any sense because we always talk about how we ain't got enough money. And you got rappers talking about money, getting shot over money. Like, why would you not want to understand money? That's insane. But these urban radio stations run by black people would literally say black people don't want you to talk in a way that's too intelligent and they don't want to talk about economics. They want to talk about celebrity gossip. And I just resented that and I just went for it. And in fact, there were other people who also said, don't put the word black in the name of the school because you're going to limit yourself, right? It should be for everybody because black people aren't going to want to do this. It's going to be Asian people and Arab people and white people. And I said, no, 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 I'm black. And I was I ain't gonna say I don't know if it was cockiness or what. I'm very confident in my abilities. I'm really I don't think that I'm good at this. I know that I'm good at this. And so I said, no, I think I can change the culture. I think that we can, if we're consistent, I believe we can change black culture and really, really focus on what matters. Because when I really started thinking about racism and all that, because I spent time around all the civil rights leaders and everything. I knew Jesse and Al very well, and I would just hear everybody's perspective. And some people were very political. Some people were into the racial issues and the anecdotes and the social stuff. And I thought all that was fine. And the activism, and I said, yeah, that's fine. But I think the biggest form of activism that will probably make the biggest impact right away is financial activism. I believe, like, let me ask you all this. Here we go. Here's I'm gonna prove my point. I think I can. Tell me if I'm right or wrong. Which would you rather be? Would you rather be a rich black person in America or a poor white person? Who do you think is going to get treated better in America by everybody? A rich black man or a poor white man? What do y'all think? The rich black person who shows up at the Four Seasons Hotel, who owns property, who owns a business, who goes to the country club and does whatever they want, drives the nice car. Like, who do you think is going to get treated better? Let's just be real. Let's be honest. Let's keep it real. Don't tell me the poor white man is going to get treated better. I don't believe that. I'm not saying that there won't be some little incidents that will occur. I mean, there are some people who are a little ignorant for sure. But you show up when you roll when you and your kids, you're gonna be in that class. If you're not there yet, you're gonna get there because what you're doing right now is gonna get you right where you want to be. So when you pull up in that Mercedes, to the fancy restaurant, and you're gonna stay in the five-star hotel, that little white busboy or whatever the hell, or valet, he's gonna kiss your ass like he does every other rich person. That's what they do. I know it because I'm not broke. I'm not poor. Me and my and I got a bougie wife. She does drive a Mercedes. She does have a Coach purse. She does have she does wear a Rolex, right? And I'm not bragging. It's just what it is. She just likes that kind of stuff. She tends to get them at a discount though. But anyway, still, like we don't get treated badly, because we have the ability to do what we need to do. Right. And so when you're stuck financially, what happens is you're forced to go into places that where you're not wanted. Like a lot of us will get up and go to a job where we are going to get treated poorly, or asking for things. Like I think that's a trauma response. They say that one trauma response is when you feel like you don't need anybody's help and you're going to do it by yourself. That's my trauma response. And I don't think it's such a bad thing. When it came to racism, I got tired of getting treated badly by white folks. I got tired of being rejected. I got tired of asking for stuff and then having you tell me no, and me being mad because it was unfair. I'll just say, you know what, I'm gonna go figure it out. I'm gonna go get it done. We gonna go get it done on our own. Because you're not gonna tell me that my ability to be happy, successful, and safe is dependent on whether or not you like me. I'm not living in that universe at all, ever. So you know what? Fine. My trauma response is I'm gonna go over here. We're gonna figure it out. Right? That's it. That's and I'm okay. I'm okay with that. Right? I'm okay with that. And because I left Louisville, Kentucky at the age of 18 for the same reason Muhammad Ali did. That place was terrible. They treated black people horrible. And it wasn't like we were gonna find you and lynch you and beat you up, even though those things have happened. It was more so like you just knew in where I grew up that if you were black, you were only going to get so many opportunities. You were only going to go so far. There are certain spaces and places and situations that you would never have access to because you're black, right? That's kind of what it was. It wasn't like people were calling me the N word every time I walked down the street. I didn't really have that experience, but I did have an experience where you just kind of knew that being black meant you were kind of in the mud socioeconomically. You were just kind of, like I would get a job at a restaurant and they would instantly put me in the back in the kitchen, and like they would never consider whether or not I could like work up front and be and work the cash register or be a host like the white girls, right? Not and I don't know, maybe it was because I had muscles and they wanted me to work in the kitchen with the or whatever, but it felt kind of like, okay, being black means you're not going to be up here, you're going to be in the back. Right. And I didn't like stuff like that. So I would just say overall, get your money right. And I guarantee you, you know, economic success really is a great repellent for racism. That if I had to pick one cure, I'd say, okay, let's just make sure every black person is economically intelligent and has plenty of wealth. And then if they do call you the N-word, you won't care because you'll be sitting in your mansion and you won't even have to talk to them anymore if you don't want to. Right. Anyway, or they work for you and you can fire them. Right. So let's keep going. A couple more things. Passive income. That's the best kind of income that there is. A lot of us never grow up learning about passive income. Passive income, here's the thing, income typically comes from an asset. That's most of the time that's a general rule. There are some assets that don't generate income, like Bitcoin doesn't generate income. But if you own a bunch of silver, if you hung out with me when we talk about stock options, you can actually make income from silver. I do that. I make income from my silver while I wait for the price to go up. And income is important because income helps you pay bills, right? So I pay bills. I go into my silver portfolio, sell some options, and then I get real money and I withdraw it and I put it in my account and I send it to my wife so she can pay the mortgage and pay whatever, pay down the credit cards, right? So assets generate income. The problem though is most income that we're aware of is active income. And active income is hard because in passive income, some other asset is making the money. It's stocks, it's real estate, it's whatever. With active income, you are the asset. You are the asset, and it's really hard because eventually you get tired, you run out of time. The cost is very high. You're spending time away from your wife and your kids or your husband and your grandchildren because you are at work so much, and you're working the asset, which is your body, your mind, your free time. Those become the assets, and you have to sell these things in order to pay bills. And that's not necessarily the healthiest approach because the human body and the brain, I don't know if that's necessarily always an appreciating asset. Maybe it's appreciating, up until a certain point, but eventually it starts to depreciate. You're 55, 60 years old, and you don't want to work 50 hours a week, 60 hours a week anymore. So, and your ability to even do that starts to drop. Or a basketball player, he makes a lot of money because he plays basketball, but then he hits 35 or 40, and suddenly he becomes a depreciating asset. So his income starts to drop. His ability to make money starts to decline. So ultimately, passive income is the goal. And so it's really important that the kids learn all the different ways to generate passive income. Make sure that they're introduced to that at an early age. All right. And speaking on that too, don't forget we have our financial flashcards for kids. And so if you go to financialflashcards.com, you can use the code morning70 and get a big discount. I think it takes 70% off or something like that. So use the code morning70, all one word, financialflashcards.com. You can buy a bunch and then resell them if you want to. Some of you are doing that and you have businesses based on our products, and I'm okay with that. You just, I guess we're the wholesaler for you and you become the retailer, and that's okay. I'm okay with those partnerships as long as the school has what it needs and I can pay my team. I want you to do well. I don't want you to just learn from us. I want you to get things from this space that go beyond money. The two biggest things I want you to get are one, community and connections with others who have the same view, because I know it's hard to be pro-black, pro-wealth, and really change the culture. I want to support you in that. Number two is I want you to find ways to make money. I want to help you. I want to say, look, hey, if there's something that I offer to you and you like it, we can make a deal. I can help you acquire it at a discount and resell it. So maybe as you form community investment clubs or a homeschool network, or you go to your church and you're doing financial literacy in your church, I believe we should be doing all these things, right? Then these can be products that you can offer at a fair price, and people will be happy to invest in these things. It's because think about it. Look at all the other areas we put money into. You see people out here buying malt liquor, buying Gucci shoes, and just stuff that's just a complete waste. Why would they not invest in education? You can build an economy around anything, actually. You can build an economy around fentanyl. You can build an economy around sex. You can build an economy around education. You can build an economy around health food. So the conscientious building of economies around the things that you want to see come to reality is really the best way to make things happen. Capitalism can create its own realities. I'm not saying capitalism. Let me take that word back, because I told you I'm not a capitalist. But free enterprise can create its own reality. So, for example, the United States has companies that are really good at selling things like guns. So because they sell guns and there's a profit incentive to sell more guns, we actually have more guns than people in the United States, because there's insane amounts of guns because the profit motive. They keep on selling more and more guns. Well, you could do the same thing with education. We could do the same thing with health. But for whatever reason, it's not as easy to do. And it's not as lucrative, right? So ultimately, form healthy economies in your life, and that will incentivize you to do more of the things that you actually want to do to improve your life. Okay, so all right. So one thing I want to do is how about this? If you put a question in the Q&A section, I will answer the questions. If you can make them like one sentence or so, I can answer questions. Don't ask me about any stock, because I don't I'm hungry and my wife is going to cook breakfast, and when I'm hungry, I don't know if I feel like looking up stocks. But if you have other questions, I'd be happy to answer them. Let's see. I'm confused when you say get insurance on stocks. I have one share that I bought. Do I just buy one put to cover? No, every put covers 100 shares, so keep that in mind. And also, don't just own one stock. That's the other thing too. I really want to challenge you on this. I see people that will invest in a way that's somewhat timid, where they will go and they'll buy like $20 worth of stock, and then that'll be what they do, and that's it. And I understand everybody starts somewhere. But here's what I'm going to challenge you on. I asked a lady one time. She told me she bought like $25 worth of stock, and she did it one time, and that was it. And I said, okay, I get it. I said, but let me ask you a question. So, if you pay your cell phone bill, or your light bill, or your car note, do they let you make one payment and then you just have the car forever? Do you just get to keep the car? Like okay, you made your one payment, now the car is yours. You paid $400. Here you go. You enjoy your car. No, they ask you to pay 400 this month, 400 next month, 400 next month, and keep going. And it's a bigger number. You know, you bought $25, $30 worth of stock. You bought one stock, and I respect that. That's a good start. But I would just say I would challenge you to be as aggressive with your investing as you are with paying your bills. And I know money's tight and I get it. I know it's hard, but everything's about the value system. There's some things, for example, I've known women who will literally be homeless before they go without getting their hair done. They will not step out of the house without going to the salon and spending whatever godforsaken amount of money is required to get their hair done, right? And so really, why can't your investing be as important as paying your car note or paying your rent and everything else? I'm not saying don't pay your rent. I'm not saying don't pay your car note. I'm saying why can't your future be as important as your car note? And if that's the case, then it has to be a lifestyle. You're not a pro. Your life is never going to be a product of something that you do one time. It won't be. Your life is a product of that which you do consistently. Can we agree on that? Do you agree? Does this make sense? Your life is a product of what you do consistently because that reflects your value system. It reflects your principles. It reflects who you actually are all the time, not who you were for 10 minutes, who you are constantly. If somebody shows up at the hospital and they're 420 pounds and dying from diabetes and a heart attack, it's not because they ate one big meal and that killed them. No, they've been eating like that for 20 or 30 years every day consistently. Right? Or if somebody's in great shape and they're about to run a marathon in the Olympics, they didn't go out for one long run and train one time. They run every day, right? So the question is, what are you doing every day, every week, every month? That's what's going to change everything. That's what's going to make the difference. You got to look at what is your regular habit. So as it pertains to the investing, don't go just buy one stock and then be done. Buy it one and then buy two later, buy five later, buy whatever, like something that's consistent and something regular. That's the point. Okay. And then at that point, you can use put options to protect the investment. If you want to dig more into stocks, we do Stock Market Tuesday. Go to drboystockmarket.com. Feel free to do a free trial. drboystockmarket.com. All right. So let's see here. Corman says how to convince rich dad to invest in life insurance. How to convince, so you got a rich dad and you want to convince your rich dad to invest in life insurance. I think there's two different, at least a couple of different things people do with life insurance. Some use it as just life insurance. That's it. Some use it as a financial vehicle, or where you're building wealth with the life insurance policy through index universal life policies, whole life insurance policies, things like that. I think I have a whole life policy. I bought it from a friend because I wanted to support my friend's business. But it's really the main goal is to make sure you have assets. I didn't really like the schedule. She gave me the schedule, this amortization schedule to show me how much money I'd have after so long. And literally, I wouldn't have any significant money until like I'm 80 years old or 75 or something like that. I was like, I don't want to wait till I'm 75. So I found that there are faster ways to build wealth, but whatever it is that you do that allows you to make a consistent payment toward wealth building long term, whether it's having money automatically taken from your check going into your stock portfolio or automatically paying into an index universal life policy, that can benefit you. Now, how do you convince them to invest in life insurance? I'm not really sure how you talk people into doing something they don't want to do. I think you can try. You can present the idea. You can say, hey, you need to have some kind of financial security. Maybe talk about what happens if you don't have life insurance. But really, truth be told, I'm just not really in the business of talking people out of who they want to be. Sometimes I think life will give you enough lessons. And then usually when people come and listen to me or want to talk to me, it's because something has happened that makes them aware, wakes them up to a certain reality. Like I had a friend who messaged me and she said, yeah, I used to not really pay attention to the stuff you talked about when it came to finances until my mother was dying and I wanted to spend every minute with my mother because I knew she only had 6 months to live. And so while I was at the hospital with my mother, my boss called me and told me that if I don't come to work, I'm going to lose my job. So she had a horrible choice between either sitting next to her dying mother or losing her job. And she said, after going through that, I never want to have that feeling again. And now her mother's gone and she can't go back and fix that. So little things like that are the reasons that I think money is so important. I think that's why financial freedom matters because when you're free, When you're financially free, you tend to be generally free. And general freedom means you get to decide what's really important to you. And it really sucks to have something that you know that you need to do, something that God is telling you to do, like spend time next to your dying mother's bedside. And these sons of bitches at some job are telling you that you have to go do something else. Oh, that's enough. And you talk about something that make you go crazy enough to want to beat somebody up, or even worse, that would be it. That would, if you had taken me away from my dying mother's bedside, I would have cracked you upside your head. You it ain't happening. It ain't happening. And so really, if there was ever a time I felt happy to have the money situation resolved, it was when I sat there and just had to watch my mama go down. It was terrible. It was like, God, this is not life. This is not. It ain't supposed to happen like this. And so yeah, so this is why you make the money, man. It ain't so you can just have a bunch of material things. Once you get all the material stuff, basically the science says that all that dopamine you get from buying a new car or a nice house or going on shopping sprees, that wears off. This is why consciousness matters, because you got to do the deep meditative work to figure out what's really going to give you a consistent level of what's the word, happiness or contentment. It can't just be the bright shiny object that you want to buy. That's going to wear off. I promise you. You when you make a lot of money, if all of you are blessed one day to one day get a check for like $100,000 or something amazing, I promise you, what's going to happen is you're going to just be super geeked for like about 2 weeks. And then you get back to your regular flow state, because that's how the brain works. The brain is not designed to keep you on a dopamine high all the time. So you got to find the things internal that are going to make you happy. And money can certainly facilitate that, but it has to be done the right way. So it's not just having money, it's the intelligent use of money that will ultimately fulfill you, in my opinion. Um, can you do a session on low cost growth, high dividend paying stocks? Yeah, we have that. If you go to the drboystockmarket.com, we've got a ton of stuff in there that you can take a look at. And yeah, bring it to class. I'd be glad to go through some with you. One high, let me see. I think I'd hit something. I think I put up something called the dividend monsters or something. I think I made a list of stocks that pay the highest dividends. Let's see if I can find it and I can put it in here. You can take a look at it. But yeah, so let me see. While I pull this up, I'll answer the next question. Let's see. Next question is, do you feel there's an AI bubble? Yeah, there is, John. The problem with the bubble is that it's very difficult to figure out when the bubble is gonna burst. That's why people they say, yeah, there's a bubble, but that doesn't mean you just sell all your stock, because if you predict the bubble correctly, which a lot of people see there being a bubble, um, if you sell too early, then you're gonna miss out. You can miss out on a lot of gains as a result of that. Okay, I'm trying to find the freaking list of the. Okay, I can't find it right now. I'll have to send it. Here we go. There we go. All right, so let me type in the word dividend. Right here it is. Okay, so these are some stocks that pay really high dividends. So here's the list. I'll put this in the chat so you can feel free to grab that. All right, Dr. Quarter Zip. Yes, man, Calvin, I was quarter zipping 30 years ago, man. I've been, when the quarter zip movement started, I said, wait, y'all need to give me credit because I was doing this before any of y'all were born. I'm kidding. But I am team quarter zip. I hate that whole, that other culture out there where you're trying to train little black boys to want to go to prison at the age of 14. Makes me angry. It bothers me. It's very sinister, like they did it on purpose. All right, so let's see it. What's the Sharon says, what's the best one S&P 500 company to buy on a $5 a day plan? I wouldn't do the $5 a day plan with one company. I would do an ETF. And some of the good ones are VOOSPY, stuff like that. Um, if you buy into one company, then you shouldn't buy into just one company. You should have your money in multiple companies, about 20 or 30 if you do individual stocks, or you could just do one ETF, which will give you instant exposure to a lot of different companies. So keep that in mind. All right, so let's see. But yeah, the $5 day plan is great. And don't forget, if you want to join the 5-year pledge, where I'm basically saying like find a bill and match that bill, give yourself a matching plan and do that for 5 years. If you do that for, say, your car note for $500 a month, after 5 years, you'll have roughly $38,000. After 10 years, you'd have over $100,000. After 20 years, you'd have roughly $300,000. After 30 years, you'd be approaching $1 million. And so, if you want to join, just text the word pledge to the number 87948. And what I'll do is instantaneously, you'll get a training that I did on different ETFs and how different ETFs can help you achieve different financial goals. So just text the word pledge to 87948 if you'd like to join the pledge. Rodney Ray, how important is having a capital base when wanting to get involved in consistent investing? And how do you create a capital base when you are paying off credit cards and child support? Um, I think that in that situation, it's a matter of just allocation. I think a capital base matters, but remember, capital isn't just money. So I spent a lot of time studying investing before I had any money. That way, when I got some money, I knew exactly what to do with it. I didn't wait till I had money to learn how to manage money. I learned how to manage money and then I went and got money, right? So ultimately, the capital base isn't just your money, it's your free time, it's your intellect, it's your will, your desire, your networks, things like that. But then if I'm really trying to build a capital base, a few things I might do is maybe try to see if I could get in spaces where I can have some partnerships with people that can help me to get some things going that will increase my income. The fastest way to increase the amount of money you can save and invest is by increasing your income through side hustles or whatever. I'm a big fan of selling stock options. I've mentioned that before, but there's other ways you can create side hustles. Be really careful though. I would really investigate and take your time because there's a lot of stuff that looks like it'll generate a lot of money and just doesn't. I like real estate. I like real estate for ownership. I don't really like real estate for cash flow generation. I think it's okay, but I don't think the cash flow is as strong as it could be. I think there's other ways to generate, strong cash flow. But I like real estate though. I like owning property. That's a good thing for sure. All right. Let's see, Tasman. My daughter wants to know. Oh, that's so cute. If she saves $20 a month and invest in the stock market until she's 18, how much will she have and why is this good? Okay, so let's see, $20 a month. Okay, wow, that's so great. Wow, I love this. This is oh wow, I'm so touched by that. That's amazing. All right, so let's see here. So we did 500 a month, and if you did 500 a month in the S&P 500, based on history, there's no guarantee now because you never know what the future is gonna do. Let's see, after 20 years, you'd have about what was the number three? A little over $300,000. So 20 let's see, 50 is one tenth of that, so that takes us to 30,000. And then you break that down into half, so maybe about 14, $15,000, right? $20 a month would be 14, $15,000 by the time she's 18, and maybe mama can add some money in. Maybe you can do like a matching thing. Like that's what I do with our kids. I'll say, okay, whatever you save, I'll double it, that kind of thing. That way you can kind of do a little bit of a Santa Claus, kind of add on and get that number higher. And then also she gets older. Like so when she gets older and you're talking about ways to make money, maybe she gets that first job. Maybe she starts a business, right? And so as her income grows, then you encourage her to invest at a higher level. So maybe make a rule now and say, always invest no less than 25% of the money that you make. And if you really want to build wealth, go to 30%, 40%, 50%. Live below your means. Basic rules you give to the kids while they're little, and they just say, okay, this must be the way you're supposed to manage money. And I guarantee you, she's going to be in good shape. So congratulations to your family. I think that's really awesome. Let's see, John. I'm new to your platform. Can you explain the two-tone panther? Oh, the panther. Hey, John. Everybody say hello to John. Welcome, John. It's good to see you, man. I'm glad you're here. All right, yeah, I forgot some people are new. Yeah, okay. So the panther behind me is the Black Business School logo, and her name is Felicia. And Felicia, it was my grandmother. My grandmother was, she never made more than $20,000 a year. She raised five kids by herself, and she never had any financial problems. Well, sorry, she had five kids, and she raised four. There's a story. It's one of those stories that the grandma don't tell because I think it was kind of painful for her. But anyway, but she raised the kids by herself and never made more than $20,000 a year. Never had a financial problem in her life. Car was paid off, house was paid off, credit cards were paid off, perfect credit. And I really learned a lot from my grandmother when it came to money and wealth. She was the first person to introduce me to compound interest. Now, and this is what I want you to understand. You don't have to have an advanced degree to teach your kids about the basics of wealth. All you have to do is light the match. If you light the spark, then they're going to go get more information. They're going to add to whatever you start. It's almost like, for example, you think about like I knew a kid who became an alcoholic, when he was 20 something years old, and all his dad did, which was terrible, was he gave him like a little bit of beer when he was a baby or something, and he as a baby he gained an enjoyment of the taste of alcohol. He didn't say go grow up and become an alcoholic, son. He just did something that no father should ever do, which was giving alcohol to a 3-year-old. Well, he could. So as he got older, he sought out that high from the alcohol, and he died a drunk. And it started with his father choosing to put that beer bottle on his lips as opposed to putting some knowledge in his brain, right? So, or like my dad. My dad was my both of my dads were drug addicts. I told you that. Heroin was the drug of choice. One dad unfortunately couldn't get away from it. My dad that raised me, he did walk away from it, but he also became an alcoholic. Best thing my dad ever did was he taught me early that alcohol and drugs are terrible. Don't touch it. Don't ever mess with it. Right. So I took that in early and I never touched it. I just never, it just was, my attention was elsewhere. And so do those little things with the kids when it comes to the wealth, just little stuff. I knew a kid who was a millionaire at 33, and I said, "Where'd you get that from? Like, what made you such a great entrepreneur?" He said, "I got it from my dad." I said, "Oh, your dad taught you how to start a business?" He said, "No." I said, "Well, what did your dad do?" He said, "Well, my dad used to always say that any black man who wants to be free should have his own business." And I said, "Well, did your dad run his own business?" He said, "No, he was a truck driver. He had a job, but he hated working for other people. So he just knew that having your own business was the best way to go." So that as a result, his son went on and became this amazing entrepreneur. You got to light the spark because this is some, pay attention when I say this. I promise you, this is so true. The what and the how of what you do never matters as much as why you're doing it. The why is more important than the what and the how. If the why is strong enough, the why will guide you to the what and the how. If you help the kids understand why, like his dad said, look, if you want to be a free black man, you got to have your own business. He didn't say, well, okay, son, let's sit down and let's study entrepreneurship. Here's a textbook. Let's read it together. He could have did all that, but he didn't. He just said, no, if you want to be free, start your own business. You don't, my dad would be like, if you don't want your life to be hell, don't become an alcoholic like me, right? Right. So it's like when you have the why, then the why fills in the what and the how. The son went out and learned how to start a business. He figured out what to learn and how to do it on his own. All his dad did was light the spark. So with your kids, when it comes to wealth, you can give them the what and the how for sure. If you want to go get extra credit, go do that for sure. But if you give them the why, that's what's going to drive everything, right? Give them the why. All right. So let's keep going. All right. One thing I forgot, I want to make sure I mentioned. I wrote stuff down. Oh yeah, let me shout out Howard Douglas Jr. also. He's a big supporter of the Black Business School. And Howard Douglas Jr., he actually does investment advising, and he's the son of Howard Douglas Sr. Or wait, no, Howard Douglas III is the son of Howard Douglas Jr. And so Howard Douglas Sr., I think, might be deceased, but they got this great family lineage. And I met with the whole family, and I love the Douglas family. They're amazing people. They might even be here. And basically, what he is doing is he is basically helping with financial advice. I'm not an advisor, but he can help you in that way. And his company is called DouglasCapitalAdvisors.com. That's Douglas with one S, Douglas Capitaladvisors.com. So somebody can type DouglasCapitalAdvisors.com in the chat. I'd appreciate it. And just go check out the brother's website, see what they got going on, see if they can help you. If they can help you, then great. If not, then that's okay too. And also, I wanted to mention, also, if you're doing stock options or you want to learn the basics, we are going to do a Prime 101 session, which where I will start from the very beginning. This is a call, this is a put, this is how you sell a stock option and generate income. We're going to do another session, Prime 101 on March 9th at 8:30 p.m. So if you want to get started and you're not sure what to do, you don't know where to begin, feel free to go to drboyceprime.com. Join us on March 9th, or maybe you already know how and you want a refresher. If you want a refresher, refreshers are always good. It's always good to go through the basics over and over again so you get the fundamentals down. So March 9th at 8:30 p.m. So drboyceprime.com is where you can sign up for that. And you can bring your whole family. It's fun to learn everything as a family. All right, let's see. A couple more questions. Let's see. DA says, is it better to sell some assets to get out of debt and avoid bankruptcy, or keep my assets and pay off a ton of debt slowly? It depends on how much debt and depends on how many assets you have. So that answer would it depend. So if I have a ton of debt and very few assets, then okay. So avoiding if I have some assets that I really want to keep and the debt is really, really big, then I guess a bankruptcy could be okay. Because what a bankruptcy tends to do is it ruins your credit score. But a credit score is only a substitute for collateral. So if I had a choice between being a person with lots of assets with a bad credit score versus the person with a great credit score and no assets. I'd rather be the person with lots of assets and a bad credit score. Because if you have collateral, you can always get a loan. The only reason credit scores were invented was a replacement for collateral. That's where your character becomes the collateral. Your payment history becomes the collateral. But really, the real collateral is your asset. So for those of you that are building up stock portfolios or building up the 401k, stuff like that, if you want to encourage your young kids and grandkids to invest in their 401k, let them know that that money can benefit them when they're young too. If they have 100,000 in their 401k, they've got collateral. They can use that to get a loan if they want to go start a business or quit their job or buy some property or whatever, right? So banks care about collateral because collateral tells them that they can get paid back if you default on the loan. Let's see, John M. Panker. I'm doing well in the stock market wise. Okay, good. But I want to learn more about options. A newbie at 52. I recently was laid off from Verizon after 28 years. I'm very sorry to hear that. I was just rehired at another engineering firm. I would like another form of passive income outside of dividend paying stocks. Thank you. Yeah, stock options are a great way to have extra income. I'm really happy for you, and I think it's a great move. My favorite way to make money. It really is. So, drboyceprime.com. Feel free to join, or you can also text the word options to the number 87948, and that's where I send links and notifications for classes. So, if you join, or even if you don't join, text options to 87948 so you'll get notifications when we meet for class. Michael, how long do you think before the bull market returns? Well, there's always a bull market somewhere. I don't know if the whole market's going to have a bull. The market's been really strong for the last 15 years, stronger than normal because the Federal Reserve has really devalued the dollar and made money super cheap by keeping interest rates extraordinarily low. So it created like an artificial environment where people got the wrong impression about how easy it is to make money. If that changes, then you could have a bear market for a very long time. So this is why different skill sets matter. If you sell stock options, you can make money in a bear market. It's easy because you're selling potential. You're not selling actual results, actual outcomes. You're selling the potential that the stock will go up. And if it never goes up, you still get to keep your money. But if you are waiting for stocks to go up, then that becomes a little bit harder. So yeah, so I don't know when the bull market will return per se. The market right now isn't that bad. It's really, I mean, it could be far worse than what it is right now. You had a bad Friday, but a lot of times a bad Friday is followed by an extraordinary Monday. But I mean, I don't know, with this war, you could have a bad Monday too. And then in that case, you're really pulling down into a deeper bear market. So it's going to be wild. It's going to be really interesting to see what happens on Monday. How does the war in Iran affect oil prices? The price of oil is exploding already. Yeah, the way the war is being fought is affecting the price of oil. Nobody expected Iran to be blowing up buildings in Dubai and Doha. You know, those are supposed to be safe places. So this war is not fun to watch. How do you determine if you have financial freedom? I have like 300K in a 401k and a couple credit cards around 40K with no bills. Um, I think I think you're pretty. I mean, financial freedom can depend on what your expenses are, but when you say you have no bills, I assume you have some bills. But I mean, the fact that your bills are low and you have your assets, and I know plenty of people who are in exactly the position that you're in, who are financially free, who would love to have 300K in their stock portfolio. Generally, the things that measure your financial security are wealth and income. Wealth is long term, income is short term. Do you have enough income to pay your bills? Do you have enough wealth to survive a financial shock? If something goes bad, are you okay? So ultimately, that's really what a lot of it comes down to. Do you have enough income to support your lifestyle that you want to live? And then you have this backdrop of wealth that's there really in case of an emergency that's growing long term. I think you're in very good shape. Not that we can't all do better, but that's pretty good. That's a great start. Congratulations to you. K. James says, can you do a session on low cost growth, high dividend paying ETFs? Oh, ETFs. Um, yeah. Hmm. Yeah. Well, that list of dividend monsters, I think it does include an ETF, and I think there are also ETFs that focus on dividend paying stocks. Uh, real estate investment trusts also pay pretty good dividends. Like a lot of people think to own real estate, you got to go buy real estate. You don't have to buy real estate. You can buy a real estate investment trust, which will pay a dividend. But yeah, we cover everything in the stock market class. So feel free to go to drboystockmarket.com. And also, I put that list of dividend paying assets in there. And if you have a portfolio of those stocks, that's pretty close to having an ETF, because all an ETF is it's a collection of a bunch of stocks pulled together. So if you have a bunch of stocks, it's kind of like building your own custom made ETF. All right, so let's see here. If I'm currently unemployed and need money for my property, how can I get the equity out? I would talk to the bank and look to borrow against or refinance or something like that. I think, what was it? We had Tim Haskins. I should give you Tim's information again. Yeah, Tim Haskins, his phone number was he runs lock-in loans. So maybe Tim can help you. At the very least, tell him I sent you, and he can maybe give you some advice and information on how to resolve that. His number is 661-992-7005. That's 661-992-7005. He's open from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time because he's out west in Vegas. 661-992-7005. His website is lockinloans.com. All right. So let's see here. Michael, in your opinion, what percentage of a paycheck should be for investing purposes? It really depends on how aggressive of an investor you are. When I was at Syracuse, I invested 70% of my check, and that was because I was trying to build a business, and I was also trying to own some assets. Um, but that was because, and it was also because I was just determined to get out of my situation. I didn't hate my situation. I wasn't like living in the projects or anything, but I felt like there was more in the world that I wanted to be a part of, and I didn't want to just sit there and just be a professor at Syracuse. I just didn't. So I would put 70% in, and the reason I could do that was because I didn't have a wife at the time. I my bills were not that high, and I was focused on what I was trying to do. I don't think 70% is normal for most people, um, but it was normal for me trying to get the escape velocity I needed to make enough money outside my job to walk away from the job. For most normal people, it might be 20%. I think 20% is a good number. And then also, don't forget those little things about wealth building. It's so much easier to build wealth if you have like a good spouse that is bringing an income that has the same goal. So if you're looking to get married, try to marry people that have the same objectives in life. Don't marry people that are going to waste money if you're saving money. I count back when I wrote my book Financial Lovemaking years ago. I counseled a couple that had divergent financial goals. The husband was he was from the South Bronx, and he was part of the origination of hip hop. He used to he used to pass out flyers for these parties they would have, and he's literally in hip hop history books. And he met this beautiful woman and got married and they had a baby. And he had a choice. His choice was, keep going with this business thing that you're doing, or or get married and be a dad. So he chose to get married and be a dad because that was the right thing to do. But he always regretted it. He was always like thinking like, what if? Because he saw his friends go on and become famous, like Russell Simmons and Kool Herc and Africa Bambaataa and Curtis Blow, right? And he felt like he was like, man, I could have been a part of that. So what happened was years later, his wife was a bus driver, and and they had like 10,000 in credit card debt, and she worked consistently to pay the debt down. She paid the credit card off to zero. And so the credit card got down to zero. So he took the credit card, he maxed it out at $10,000 again so that he could restart this business. And I think it was like hosting parties or something. And unfortunately, it didn't work out. And he lost all the money. And so when I was sitting at this table, I just saw the wife was crying because she was trying to decide if she should leave her husband or not. She didn't leave him. And it just made me think deeply about just how important it is to kind of be in alignment, financially, and then also thinking deeply about every decision that you make and knowing that some decisions you can't reverse, you can't roll back. I think he loved being a father and a grandfather and all that, but it was a hard choice. Like it was like he gave away a piece of himself to do that. Women do that too. And I don't know what the right answer to that is. I don't know. I just know that it was really chaotic to see them try to figure this out, right? Because there was real hurt that was sort of passed on. So I think optimally, if you're thinking about marriage and dating and all that, I almost feel like maybe having just extensive conversations about goals and dreams, and then thinking about what you're trying to do in your life, and making sure that it all kind of locks in and fits together, and then accepting the fact that there's trade-offs. Everything has a trade-off. Like I made a trade-off. I didn't get married as early as I probably should have. I was engaged. I got engaged on the Wendy Williams show in 2007 to a really nice lady, and we chose not to get married. And what that did was that gave me another 10 years to focus on building my business and my career. I have relationships and stuff, but I didn't get married or anything because you only marry one person. So I was really sort of patiently waiting for that situation to emerge. And so that was cool, like, right? Like I could take 70% of my check, spend it all. And if it went bad and I lost a bunch of money, I didn't have somebody, making me feel bad about it. I could just do whatever I needed to do. But the downside was that I didn't stop to like live life. I didn't stop to like have kids in my 30s, right? Because I like kids. I love raising kids. So marrying a woman with kids, a lot of guys made fun of me because I married a woman with kids. The internet's a brutal place. So there are a lot of guys who called me a simp because I married a woman with 3 kids, and I don't understand that language. That doesn't make sense to me. But it was really, I didn't look at the kids as a liability at all. I looked at it as an opportunity. It was like, man, I love being a dad, and I get a chance to do that. So I was like thankful that she let me be a dad because I had that part in me that I wanted. But if I could do it over again, I probably would have struck a little bit more balance and tried to be like a dad of my kids, like have like 6 of my own kids and really pour into them. That's the one thing I probably would have changed. But I love the kids though. They're really awesome. But it's like it's kind of like a little bit of a complex legacy at that point, right? Like I can't say, well, these are my 8 kids and this is my legacy. It's like, no, these are a bunch of kids that I'm connected to, that I care about, and I have one biological child, and then I have, the people I've spoken to here, like you and your kids, and maybe that's part of the legacy too, right? So it's kind of like a trade-off. You never know which decision is the right one, but you got to think deeply about these things, and because these are all investing decisions, every single choice you make when it comes to your life really is an investing decision, and it's not usually going to involve money at all. The money is like tiny compared to like life and health and your peace and your who you choose to spend your life with and all that stuff. And if you're in alignment in those things and you're thinking carefully about these decisions and you're making them independently, that's another mistake I see people make, is they make the decision based on what the other people are going to think. Like, I'm going to marry somebody because it's going to heighten my prestige. Other people are going to think this is great for me, as opposed to what I really think is great for me. I think that's a big mistake. You got to do what you need to do. Stop worrying about what other people think. None of those people are going to be around when the consequences come knocking. So don't be letting those other people pressure you into doing stuff you don't want to do. All right. So anyway, let's finish up for today. All right. So don't forget, we're going to do the Silver Mastery reset on March 3rd. So if you want to join us to analyze silver, safe ways to invest in it, we're going to break it down, just all the way down, all the way down. I'll put the link in the chat. The date says February 10th, but that's not the right date. This is a remix. So here's the link if you want to join us. And if you did the first one, you can come back again for free if you want to. And everything is yours for life. So the link is in here. That's going to be March 3rd. And also, don't forget to get on the text list for this class if you want to be invited for tomorrow. So text the word morning to the number 87948. So text morning to 87948. I hope you guys have a great day. God bless you. And I'll keep you posted on this war and what it means. Monday is going to be a crazy day for the stock market. So it's going to be wild. So have a good day, everybody. I'll see you soon. Peace.